if you've heard of 1689 Federalism,
Mm-hmm.
it's a covenant theology position. And so I was going to ask if you had known anything about it, read. Sam Renahan had written a book, and a couple other guys that I well respect, Jim Renahan and Richard Boxalis. These are some really good guys. I met them, great saints, and benefited greatly from their work and their ministry. But I was wondering if you had known anything about that or read anything on it, and because it differs a lot on, of course, the traditional position of covenant theology, whereas, of course, we're different from the Presbyterian's position of the administration of the ordinances and things like that. But I was wondering if you knew anything about that, or if you had read it and thought anything about it, and just wanted to see your take on it.
Yeah, I've actually avoided it for a couple of reasons. I was introduced to it in the worst possible way. A young man who had started reading on it. Well, I was an elder in a Reformed Baptist church for a long period of time before I ever even heard the term. So it came about from a revitalized interest in the writings of the framers of the 1689 and the conclusion on the part of many that the position that they took was not the position that Reformed Baptists had been taking basically this entire century. And that, in fact, in essence, from their perspective, the position that certainly I had been taught and that I had been taking and that every Reformed Baptist that I knew up until only 2010, maybe even later than that, but somewhere around in that time period, I'd never even heard of any other perspective amongst Reformed Baptists. But the idea now is that wasn't the position of the framers. Okay? The way it was presented to me at the time was that Abraham was in the New Covenant and that all the elect are, in fact, in the New Covenant. And that's sort of a, if you know all of the arguments that go back and forth on minutia in regards to Noahic covenants and Abrahamic covenants and Mosaic covenants and how all of them relate to one another and how they come into the new covenant and what fulfillments are. And obviously, a lot of it has to do with what was the nature of circumcision. Circumcision is a part of what covenant, how the covenant promises map on top of each other, how they become fulfilled in Christ. And it's incredibly complicated. And to be honest with you, pretty much every book you're going to read is going to have its own flavor as to exactly where it comes down on a tremendous number of secondary issues that, honestly, there are deep, dark Facebook groups that people spend their entire lives arguing over the very small minutiae of exactly how to map all of those things out. But basically, at that time, I was like, well, the way that it was presented to me anyways, I said, if that's the case, the writer of the Hebrews missed the biggest argument he ever could have made for the supremacy of the work of Christ. And I don't get that. And I fault myself for this, but because of the arrogance and immaturity of the person that presented it to me and the way he did it, I was just like, I'm just not even interested in. Okay, I'm not even going to stick my nose in that. I asked my fellow elders, you guys heard any? They're like, never heard of it. Brand new to us. Okay, doesn't make it wrong. And I suppose when I get thrown the hooskow in the not too distant future, maybe I'll have time to read up on it if you're allowed to read books in the hooskow. And so I'm not saying that I'm going to arrange a debate on it because I don't know enough about it to debate it. I just know that the first thing that struck me as I listened to it, the first thought across my mind was just this. Are you familiar with New Covenant theology?
I am very familiar with it.
Okay. That, to me, was a reaction to the Presbyterian understanding of covenant theology from people who are Reformed and have Reformed commitments. And yet it was an overreaction. There's always a desire to clearly distinguish your position when you're in the minority from the majority position, because it's easier for you to convince people to join your group when it's clearly differentiated where you agree and where you disagree. And so, from my perspective, the New Covenant guys were out of balance. I mean, it became really out of balance when you had people saying everything has to be repeated in the New Covenant, and so, since there's no prohibition against marrying your sister, you can marry your sister. I mean, that's when it goes whoosh, right off the cliff. But it was moving that direction because of the fundamental assumptions that were being made. So in other words, good people can overreact to a majority position. And what struck me is, if you've got an argument that would be that killer, why isn't it used in Scripture? And so what struck me is, I've always got to be aware of the fact that even those that identify with and I'm so thankful for and learn so much from can sometimes pull a little hard on the tug of war rope and maybe become a little imbalanced. I haven't seen any reason as of yet to abandon the arguments that I've made in the past in regards to such issues as baptism. Maybe since I'm going to be doing a series on baptism over the next number of months at Apologia, maybe that will give me the opportunity. Maybe I can get Richard or somebody to send me a 15-page paper that I can digitize and look at, and maybe what was presented to me was just presented to me so poorly and so badly that maybe there's something there. But that's where I've been, and fault me for, being willing to say, hey, since it was presented to me so badly, I'm not going to waste my time on it. I could be faulted for that, but that's been my experience.
I understand. There's books are being written every day, and to keep up with the ones who have written and are now gone, and the ones that are continuing to be put forth, it's a very difficult thing. So, no, but I sure appreciate your weigh in on that. Thank you, Dr. White, and I appreciate your ministry.
Obviously, I would hope that it would not be something that would result in some kind of division. Though I'll be perfectly honest with you, the fact that Reformed Baptists are still Baptists means we can divide over almost anything. And that's not a good thing. That's not a good thing. So anyways, thanks, Chris.
No. Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
All right. God bless. Bye-bye.